Hello and welcome to A Deadly Silence. I'm your host, Larry Curtis, and it is the goal of all of us associated with our program to bring you current and educational information associated with the alcohol and drug epidemics, not only within the city of Brockton, but throughout all of our South Shore communities. Today, our guest is Sandra Pacheco. Sandy, welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Sandy is a mother of an addict who, at the age of 23, passed on August 9th, 2008. Is that correct? This is your son, Stephen?
Yes.
Our condolences for all of us here at A Deadly Silence on that awfully terrible experience.
Thank you.
And you're here today to share with our audience some of the experiences of what led up to Stephen's addiction and what transpired as he attempted his recovery aspects, but ultimately was not able to be successful there. Tell us a little bit about Stephen's growing up.
Well, Stephen was your average child growing up. I mean, as a small child, young child. When he got into his teenage years, he was very athletic. He got involved in sports, and he was just very outgoing. He was very lovable.
Youngest of two siblings, I understand?
Yes, he has my oldest son is 3 years older than Stephen.
So he had a brother that he looked up to a little bit while growing up.
Absolutely.
From that perspective.
Absolutely. They were very close. Yep. When Stephen got into his early teenage years, probably about 14, 15, I started getting suspicious he was dabbling in drugs, and I tried seeking help. At that point, I was a single mother. His father and I had split up when he was 8. And I tried going through my pediatrician, seeing if there was any type of a program I could put him into. And I was told that I couldn't force him to do anything. That, unless he was a danger to himself, they couldn't forcefully put him in any type of program.
So even though you're a mother, you have a suspicion that there's something not right and it's probably a drug-related issue, you're reaching out for help and you're being told that you can't do anything.
Right.
Wow.
So
it's what every parent wants to hear when they're looking for help.
Then I decided to, I was a kitchen designer in one of the big box stores, and one of my customers was a police officer. So I gave him a call and asked him to come by the store so I could talk to him, and I explained to him what I thought was going on. And I told him I wanted to get Stephen put into some type of a program that, would basically help him. And he said, unfortunately, until he breaks the law, legally you can't force him into any program. I mean, and the thing that I struggled with this was that, wait a minute, he's a minor and I'm his mother. Mm-hmm. Why can't I put my son into a program?
I'm recognizing early on there's a problem.
Right.
And
I'm trying to nip it in the bud
mm-hmm.
before it gets out of hand.
Exactly.
Because, being a single mother, I had to work crazy hours. It was like there's too much idle time on their hands, and if somebody's going to be thinking about getting into mischief, they've got free reign.
So he's in his adolescent years. He's entering high school. He's got his buddies, peers, peer pressures, that are just driving him into the addiction scenario, basically speaking. And you're seeing this, and yet
I'm asking for help, and there's nothing out there.
There's nothing.
There's nothing out there. And one time when we were living up in Everett, and he was in the high school, and I got a phone call at work from the school saying they wanted me to come to the school to take my son because he was on something. Mm-hmm. That was really when I knew,
Yeah, okay. Mm-hmm.
I got to the school, and the nurse greeted me at the door, and she said to me, "We don't want you to say anything to upset him because we don't know how he'll respond."
In essence.
And I just looked at her. She's like, "We have no idea what he's on, but he's on something." Mm-hmm. And I just looked at her. Because at this point, I'm struggling to pay my bills. I'm being called out of work to pick my son up at high school because he's on something. I looked at her. I said, "You know what? He's my son. He's not going to raise a hand to me." I said, "I'm not going to go in there and keep my mouth shut."
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I went into the office, and there was the vice principal, the nurse, school police. And they're sitting there, and they're telling me the things that they did, like they tried to get him to follow a pen and all this. And he's sitting there in a chair like this.
Slumped down.
This is stupid. This is stupid. And I'm just, so now I'm like, I'm mad, and I'm totally embarrassed.
Embarrassed, yep.
So finally, he was he was actually closer to me than you are right now. And finally, I just leaned over, and I was like, you know what, Steve? I said, you're right, this is stupid. But we're here because of you. So you need to sit there and shut your mouth, because I'll smack you in front of these people. And he just looked at me, and he shut up. And we left, and I brought him to the doctor's office, and they did blood work on him. In the process, he locked himself in a bathroom. He was, I don't know what he was on, but he was definitely. They could never figure out what he was on. So I don't know what their blood tests, what they screened him for, but they couldn't tell me what he was on.
Sounds like they didn't really do. I didn't want to know. Yeah.
But it was just, and even with all of this going on, trying to find somebody to help you, there's nobody there. And people are under the illusion that, if these kids get into this stuff that, oh, well, get them help. They don't realize that it's hard to get them help. Unless you've got a good bankroll,
right?
It's hard to get them help.
So that's to have been picked up from the school, taken to the physician's office, try to find out what he's on. They can't figure it out, which doesn't make any sense. It's almost a denial aspect on the systems itself.
Yeah, I'm like, how can you not tell me what you're finding? Well, they said because the tests, they only test for specific things. So if he's on something they're not testing for, it's not going to show up.
Yeah, it's not going to show up, right? Yeah.
I'm like,
that's wild.
Doesn't sound like a drug screen to me. Then
no, it's not. It's not a drug screen. Not from that perspective at all. So he's in high school now. You obviously, your suspicions are confirmed.
Yeah,
at
they're
that
confirmed.
Point in time.
He's doing something.
He's doing something, and the peer pressure. Did he finish high school?
He actually he went back to high school later.
Okay. So he dropped out.
He did drop out. He actually, during the course of him battling his addiction, he went to work and he paid for his classes at Brockton High School.
Okay.
He paid for them himself to get his diploma because he didn't want to get a GED.
Okay. All right. So he utilized. So he was, even though he is experiencing the addiction aspect, he, in his mind, recognized the value of a high school education at that point in time versus remaining a dropout or even going to get a GED.
Right.
Which is the accepted norm for anybody that's dropped out of school. And at that time, there was not the recovery high school that we have today here in the South Shore Independence Academy, which came into play about 2 years ago. That was that tool didn't exist for parents to.
It did not. And we were not living down here at the time. After I went through all that while we were in Everett, I decided that I wanted to come back down to the South Shore. My mother had passed away, and I was coming to visit my dad on my days off. So I was down. I was down here a lot, and I just said, you know what, we need to just go south.
Okay.
And in the process of trying to find a place, I ended up at my father's house.
Okay.
With Stephen. So things in his life changed. My father is an extremely lovable, gentle man, and Stephen was like a younger version of him.
Okay.
So we were all very much alike. We tend to click. It was a good situation for Stephen. He was getting the nurturing he needed, the encouragement he needed, and the love he needed. Yeah. And you felt in the process of that is how he, like he said to me, Mom, you think I should get my GED or I should go to school and get my diploma? And I said, Stephen, that's something that you really have to decide. I says, but what you need to look at is, I said, I got my GED, and you see how we've lived.
Right.
We haven't had a lot of money. We've just gotten by. I says, and your father goes on vacation every year, and he got his diploma. I said, so you need to decide what you want.
Yeah.
He said, but
Good
keep in
analogy.
mind that you're
Yeah.
going to be taking care of a family someday.
Yeah.
And he just looks at me and he was like, well, Ma, no offense, but I want to live like Dad.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. So he decided to go to high school at night.
That's a good role model
It was
to look up
it
to.
was good,
Yeah,
you know. And I
that's a
said,
good
don't
thing.
worry
Yeah.
about it. I'm not offended at all. I'm
No.
glad.
That's what we want. Something
Yeah.
better. Every parent wants something a little better for their children than what maybe
Absolutely.
we ourselves had experienced at that time.
And he worked
Yeah.
really hard at that.
Yeah.
And I think that it was a good thing for him because it made him focus on something.
So you transition from Everett, you're down in Brockton now, you've got some nurturing center around his life now. Was he clean at that point in time, or was he still dabbling, or did he relapse, or what you feel happened?
When we first came down here, he had not gotten into that yet.
Okay,
I believe it started shortly afterwards.
okay,
It was something that him and his girlfriend at the time they experimented,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the classic story. They were out with friends and everybody was doing it, so they all
just
doing the
joined
Oxycontins.
in the party.
That's basically
Right,
how it started for them. And, you know, and I mean, a lot of these kids, they don't realize, well, they didn't realize that Oxycontin is a synthetic heroin.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, that's where you're going to be.
Yep.
They didn't know that. You know, they
Exactly.
just thought that they were just taking another pill.
Taking another pill,
Yeah.
enjoying the euphoria of the high, and
Absolutely.
going to be able to replicate that the next time around.
I don't think they realized what they were getting into. Till
I
it
don't
was
think
too late.
I don't think society as a whole realized the addictive properties of the OxyContins when they came out on the market.
Well, there was
you
a
know.
big lawsuit that was settled with
Yeah.
Purdue Pharma, who
Right.
they're the maker of it, that they admitted to misleading doctors and the public
And the prescribing of it, you know.
to,
there's no-
to the fact that, yes, it is very addictive.
Yeah, exactly. So Stephen goes back, night school, gets his diploma. Does
Yeah.
he move out with the girlfriend at this point in time?
Throughout that process, they broke up.
Okay,
They couldn't get clean together.
okay,
So she ended up in one place, which I felt was a blessing, because I knew that he wouldn't walk away from her.
right.
They were drug buddies. They thought they loved each other, and maybe they did to a certain extent, but they were
But
drug
they loved the
buddies.
drugs that they were sharing.
And they couldn't get
Remote,
clean
yeah.
together. They had
Yeah,
to be separated. And in the
Okay.
process of that happening, Stephen met another girl who didn't do drugs.
Okay.
And that was who he was with for the remainder of his life.
So he has a stronger positive influence in his life now, and
Yes.
has he gone into like a detox or recovery at this point in time?
Well, when he met her, they hadn't known each other all that long when he relapsed,
Okay.
maybe about 6 months. And she stuck by him.
Okay.
She waited for him to get out. She went and visited him. I used to pick her up, or she'd meet me there, and because you could only visit on certain times.
Right,
And she stuck by him, and he just I think he was just growing up. I think between having her in his life and just maturing, he just started looking at things differently. He started fighting harder.
So he's at the age about 21, 22 at this point in time, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting over the juvenile delinquency aspects of everything, and has found somebody that he has
It's stable and smart.
stable.
And that loves him.
And loves him as well, right, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and is clean
Yep,
and likes what he sees,
absolutely.
you know, and that's something I need to get.
Yeah, she was a great girl.
Yeah.
She really was. She was good for him, and he was good for her.
Okay. So did they end up living together?
Yes,
or-
they
okay,
got
so-
an apartment
all right,
together up in Billerica.
Okay.
Her mom lives in England, so she would go and visit her mother every year. And in 2007, Stephen went with her, and he loved it. He loved meeting her family. He loved the fact that we have English blood in us, so he was, of course, telling her mother that. But they took lots of pictures, and they just had a blast. And he came home, and he was just on cloud nine. He just told me how beautiful it was, how much he loved it, and he wanted me to go with them. the next time
The
they
next
went
time
back. Because I always said I wanted to go see the Eiffel Tower. And he was like, no, we can take a train.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, really?
Yeah.
He was like, yeah. So that was the plan. But the year that 2008, when Stephen passed away, she was in England. He had gotten hired with the sheet metal union about a month or two beforehand, so he couldn't go on the trip.
He was going to go, but
Yeah,
wasn't
he couldn't go.
He got
And,
the job he's been waiting to get for a long time.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know.
because he had tried
Yeah.
to get in the year prior,
Right.
and he didn't get in.
Okay.
So he was very excited about getting in.
Yeah.
He looked at it as instability.
Another milestone in the road
Yeah.
of recovery of getting a great paying job and career to move ahead on.
Yeah.
You know, so he's got a lovely girlfriend. He's been experiencing things for the last year and a half, positive influences, you know, all the right things that you want to see in somebody has been dealing with addiction and is on the road to recovery. So he gets the job, the girlfriend goes on the vacation, and he can't go.
Right.
What happened?
Stephen did not do good with alone time. Matter of fact, when they were talking about, you know, her going away and stuff, I had said to him, well, why don't you, because he was working in town. So I said, well, why don't you just come to Brockton and stay down with me for a few nights? And that was the plan. He was
Yep.
supposed to come down. And he was also supposed to spend some time with some of his friends. And everybody was kind of doing this because they didn't want him by himself.
Right.
And one of the times he had relapsed was when she had gone to England the year prior. So they just didn't want it to happen again.
Okay.
And was it, or actually it might have been, it was 2 years.
2
I think.
years, yeah, just when they first
That-
met.
yeah. And but he didn't come down. He ended up just, you know, I'd talk to him on the phone and he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to the gym, and
Okay.
you know,
So he
sounded fine.
It sounds like you've had a very close relationship.
We were very
And-
close. I mean,
and-
because
yeah.
we were very much alike. You know, I mean, we could almost finish each other's sentences.
Okay.
You know? We both gave each other what we needed. You know, we both were very nurturing and loving to each other. We just had the same type of personality.
A trust and a love for each
Yeah.
other.
He
you
knew
know, right.
that, you know, I always told both of my boys, no matter what, it doesn't matter what you do, I'm going to be there. I might not like it, and I might tell you I don't like it, but I'm not going to turn my back on you.
Right.
So they knew that.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that had a lot to do with why Stephen trusted me and talked to me about the things that he did, because he talked to me about a lot of things that boys don't talk to their mother about. Talk to their father, but not their mother. We just had a real close relationship.
And he was sharing with you his struggle with the addiction
Yeah.
during that period of time
All
as
the
well.
time he wasn't
Yeah.
living at the house. I mean, if he had a relapse, he would call me.
Yep.
And he would say, Mom, I relapsed, I'm waiting for a bed, and I'm going to go into a program, and I want you to know.
Okay.
There was one time he called me, and the night before, he was in Somerville. He had actually overdosed on the sidewalk. Somebody called an ambulance, and he was in Somerville Hospital, and his girlfriend had to go get him. And he didn't have to call me and tell me that.
Right.
I never would have known about it,
Right.
but he did.
But that bond,
Yeah, I mean,
mother and son.
you know, I feel grateful that he trusted me like that.
Yep.
You know, that he would talk to me. I mean, he would call me when he was having bad days. And, you know, he'd tell me, Ma, I really want to get high today. And we would just talk until he felt better.
Right.
And when I hung up, I knew he wasn't going to get high. You know, and that was one of the hardest things for me when Stephen did pass away, is like, why didn't he call me? You know, or why didn't he call his friend Maddie
Yeah.
that he talks to all the time?
So the girlfriend's in Europe visiting her parents. He started the new job, but he's alone.
Right.
And even though he's called you in the early stages of her vacationing with her family over there, it's a lot of downtime
Right.
for somebody to start thinking of all the things that have transpired in their lives.
Absolutely.
And how did you find out that Stephen had overdosed and passed?
Stephen passed away on a Saturday. Friday, they say it was Saturday. Friday night, I had called him, got his voicemail, left him a message. He didn't call me back. I didn't think anything of it. I figured maybe he went out with his friends and he just got home late and he'd call me,
Call you in the morning.
Well, I tried calling him on Saturday and he didn't call me, and I thought, well, maybe he's working overtime because, the guys in the unions, if they can work on Saturday, they work overtime. And then when I got a phone call from my daughter-in-law Saturday night, wanting to know if I heard from Stephen, and I said, no, why? And she said, well, Roger, his father, was up from Florida, and he's been trying to get in touch with him, and he can't get in touch with him. And I said, no. I said, I'll try him again. I said, has Chris heard from him? And she said, no. Mm-hmm. So I hung up the phone from her. And I tried calling him, and I didn't get him. I called the house phone, didn't get him. Called my nephew, who worked in the union with him. He hadn't seen, they didn't work that day.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And then my daughter-in-law called me back again, and she said his father was going to take a ride up to his apartment. And when I hung up the phone, I just didn't feel right. Something wasn't right, and I didn't know what it was.
Parents' gut instinct.
And I called the Billerica Police Department, and I just told them that my ex-husband was on his way. I gave him the address, and I said, could you please meet him there? And they met him there. And it's a secure building, so the police officer rang bells until somebody answered, and they just told him, we're the police, you need to let us in. They went in. Well, when they went up to the apartment door, the door was cracked open, which I found unusual, because if somebody's going to do that, they're going to lock their door. It didn't make sense to me.
Certainly close it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the police officer looked at my ex-husband and said, because the door is open, we can't go in. You have to go in because you're his family and you're here.
Right. Mm-hmm.
If you weren't here, we could go in legally. Mm-hmm. So they sent him in. And he went in, and he walked through the house, and he heard water. And he followed the sound and went to the bathroom, and he found Stephen on the floor. And that was it.
He had passed.
Yeah.
From an overdose.
Yeah.
At that point in time.
Yeah.
Nobody will ever know why,
No.
where it came from, whatever, from that perspective.
I mean, it could have been maybe something had happened, maybe something went wrong, maybe he was happy about how good his life was, and he looked at it as in some type of maybe a celebration, giving himself a little treat of some sort.
Yep.
Nobody will ever know.
So Dad finds him. Now Dad's got to call Mom.
Yeah. No. No.
What happened?
He couldn't even. No. His girlfriend actually called my daughter-in-law.
Okay.
Yeah. My daughter-in-law. She ended up calling her back because she just didn't believe what she had heard. Mm-hmm. And then she had the honors of calling me. And it was horrible. I was down the Cape. A friend of mine had a place down on Peters Pond in Sandwich, and that's where we were. We went for a girls' weekend away. Mm-hmm. So there I was in the middle of the woods, 8:30 at night.
Being told that you're
screaming. I don't even really. I just remember my face was in the dirt. That's all I really remember about that night, and I was just screaming. I just drove home in a trance, just numb. By the time I got home, my whole family was at my father's house. And it was horrible.
What would you say that you would want people to remember most about Stephen?
Well, anybody that knew him, I don't really have to say anything. He was just that kind of person. If he walked in here right now and introduced himself to you and you talked to him for 5 minutes, you'd pull up a chair, you'd want to talk to him. He was just that kind of person. Very lovable. very affectionate. People that didn't know him, I worked with Steve Damish on a story with the Enterprise. It's called Heaven, Hell, Heroin. And it's a story about my son. And it's a story that a lot of people that know Stephen were involved in and were interviewed for, so that Steve could paint a clear picture of who my son was.
And this was the Enterprise,
The Enterprise.
Wasted Youth
This isn't
series?
Wasted Youth.
It wasn't part of the
No.
Wasted Youth series? Okay, it was a separate...
But if you
Yep.
Googled Heaven, Hell, Heroin,
Okay,
Stephen Pacheco's story, it would be in there.
okay.
They did an excellent job on really catching who he was and what he meant to people. I would recommend for people to read that story and just accept it for what it is, and forget about the fact that you're reading a story about a person that was a heroin addict, because being a heroin addict doesn't define who you are. It's a very small part of who these kids are. Very small.
Very small,
And
but
there's
very
so
deadly.
much other things that have gone on in their lives and that have made them the people that they are. And that's what I think people need to focus on and remember, is really the person. Not the addiction, not the
Right.
disease. Because you know what, we all have a lot of addictions.
Absolutely.
A lot of us drink coffee every day. We smoke. We go shopping. We gamble.
Yep.
It's an addiction. And a lot of people have them.
Right.
Don't judge a person because of that, and don't let that define who they are, because there's so much more.
And there's so much negativity associated with the drug addiction that, you know, it is a disease. It's no different than any other healthcare disease that's out there today.
No.
You know, but we, as a society, have chosen to, you know, shun
Yeah.
the families and the loved ones of the addicts.
We
you
live
know.
in a very judgmental society. And, you know, being a heroin addict, that's like, it's a
Ooh.
dirty family
Yeah.
secret.
How could you do that?
Oh,
How
my
could you let your
goodness.
kid do that?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you're absolutely
Yeah.
right, you know, and somebody that I know that lost her son, he actually hung himself because he couldn't deal with his addiction. And when she went back to work, somebody actually looked at her when they asked what happened to her son. She told them that he killed himself.
Yeah.
The lady actually looked at her and said, "How selfish is that of him?" And when she ever told me this, I couldn't believe it. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, doesn't she realize you're in pain?
Yeah. No. Insensitive
It's,
from that perspective.
yeah.
We've got about 30 seconds left.
Oh.
If you can say one thing to the parents of an addict out there, what would that be?
Talk to them. Love them. Accept them and stand behind them. Don't give up.
Sandy, it's been very, very wonderful having you here today, sharing with us your story of pain and love at the same time of your son. On behalf of all of us at A Deadly Silence, thank you for being here with us, and thank you for sharing your time with us today.
Thank you.
Good night.